Video is not intended for children. Viewer discretion is advised.
If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, I can't believe I did that. Greetings, one and all, and welcome to Mornings of Mischief. I am your host, Stone Loki. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to Chris Persia, DJ, Ronnie G, Dave Bob, Dean Krantz, Nordipoopus Cooper, Purple Valkyrie. Good morning, Purple. Chris Persia, good morning. Mark the Infinitely Tired. How are you doing, brother? A Dig Outlaw, the Doctor of Disaster and Destruction. Good morning, my friend. Good morning, Project Story Time. Yeah, it's a boomer moment. Good morning, Daryl the Derelict. Good morning, Archer Colin. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to Midnight's Edge. Hail, Midnight's Edge. How are you doing, Tom? Let's see here. Mexican Iron Man just sent me a message. Oh. Well, let's see. I'll be... Da, 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 da. All right, so Arwen Avalon, good morning. Dean Krantz, how are you doing, brother? Andy Masterson, good morning. Good morning, everyone. So for the past couple of days, I've noticed people absolutely losing their shit over some of the dumbest things and saying some of the dumbest things. And we're going to start with our good friend Pedro Pascal. Mandalorian, this is over on Bounding into Comics. Mandalorian actor Pedro Pascal, who plays the main character Din Djarin in Lucasfilm's Disney Plus series, recently mourned the assailants of Kyle Rittenhouse. Now, everybody's heard about what happened, and people have gone on and on and on and on about Kyle Rittenhouse, and that's not the point of this. Point of this is that Hollywood, the industry itself, has got its head up its ass. And it's had its head up its ass for the last, I don't know, forever. Now, the problem I see people having with this is that Pedro Pascal is defending Rosenbaum, who has a lengthy criminal record, including being a registered offender. As reported, Rosenbaum had been accused of all kinds of bad, nasty shit with a woman under the age of 18. He was convicted of it during a plea deal, second degree during a plea deal. Charge of first degree intentional Anthony Huber video presented after being attacked right now. Yeah. Okay, so what did Pedro say? Pedro said Joseph Rosenbaum, 36, and Anthony Huber, 27, murdered August 25th, 2020. Rest in peace. Of course, that's libel too, because they weren't. They were found. Rittenhouse was found. But obviously not guilty. But that's not the first time he's done something like that. He also put out a tweet last year that said losers in 1865 with a Confederate flag, losers in 1945 with a Yahtzee flag, losers in 2020 with a MAGA hat. That was a picture that Pascal put out and pissed a whole bunch of people off. What do you guys think? Do you think he's doing this for some kind of weird attention? If you think he's just doing this for intention, throw a 1 in chat. I don't think he's doing it for just intention. I think he wants to rattle the cages, start 9 kinds of crap. I don't think that this is just something that he's doing to get a job or to keep a job. This is something he is doing deliberately. Gesture of sin with a 1. I think he's just an idiot. Purple Valkyrie. Same guy that mourns these people said nothing when 11 Marines, 1 sailor, and 1 soldier were killed because of shit orders in Afghanistan. Very true, Dean Krantz. And a very, very good point. He's just a weirdo. Dave Bob. Soul Assassin throws out a 1. Pedro is playing a character. He's doing it because he wants to. Chris Persia. See, that's a really weird thing. You wouldn't think someone would go way out there like this, but then he's not the only one who did this. Mark Ruffalo recently did the exact same thing, and that's what I mean when I say burnt tacos in Murica. Justice weeps bitterly today. We are coming together to heal the scars left by the wounds of this grief. We will care for each other and remember why we continue to march. After all I have seen and heard about these weapons of war, these killing machines, there is no doubt that people who faced this young man were more afraid of him than he was of them. He was the one with a weapon of war loaded and ready to be used on people. Now, see, that comes off as more Ruffalo being Ruffalo. Do I think that people gunning each other down the street is a good thing? No. But I also think that rioting, burning fucking cities down isn't a good thing either. Marco Ruffalo has also said some really screwed up things in the past, but he also works for Disney. So, T-shirt historian, good morning. Glad to be able to catch you today. Good morning, T-shirt. Chris Persia, never forget his family were hardcore is supporters. Yeah, that has to leave a mark on your soul. So I've got a friend that his parents immigrated from Cuba when he was a kid. And he voted a different way this last election. It's really weird. We get along great, but he's always voted for one side. And that's it. And he voted a different way this last year because he said, I've heard the stories my parents have talked about. I've listened to my parents. He remembers almost nothing from when he lived in Cuba. But he has their stories. And that's the last kind of system he wants to deal with. Is it that simple? Is it just this socialist mentality that is driving these people to do the things that they do? Is that it? I find it extremely difficult to believe that that's it. I find it extremely difficult to believe that that is it. You don't defend someone guilty of those crimes off the top of your head. He probably doesn't even know. Pedo Pascal probably didn't even know when he read when he saw that he went to tweet that out. He probably didn't even know about that guy. Doesn't matter. To him, it didn't matter. If it did matter, if it mattered who you were defending, who you were sticking up for, would it have been different? Pat S., if guys like Rosenbaum are so great, they should find someone with a similar record and hire them as a nanny for their children. There you go. Project Storytime. These people know full well who they are defending. Hollywood loves this behavior. Why do you think they are completely ignoring the Maxwell case? Well, they've got stakes in the Maxwell case. There's a reason why that happened. There's a reason why it's her being tried instead of him. Does he even know what color the attackers were? A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't, Archer. And like I said, I'm not here to talk about the Rosenbaum case. I'm not here to talk about what happened with him in Kenosha. I'm here to talk about the industry and why they have burnt tacos. Why they are eating burnt tacos this morning for breakfast. And saying, yummy, nothing's wrong. Nothing's wrong with this taco. It's just right. Most of that crowd didn't follow the trial. They just saw an opportunity to get attention. Dave Bob. Is that it? Is it attention? Is it attention time? You know, a lot of people still look at Hollywood and look up to Hollywood and go, this is what I want to be. This is what I want to do. These are the people I want to be around. I feel bad for you if you feel like that. I really do. Sure, acting is fun. It's enjoyable. It's one of those things that a bunch of people would love to do and get paid to do. But apparently, you have to sell yourself and sell your soul to be able to get on and do the things they do. Give me 1 second. I am trying to do something here. I don't know why it won't let me. But it is. All right. There we go. Okay. Sell your soul wholesale. Would that be soul sale? Tom from Minutes Edge. Yes. Check your DMs, Tom. Gun Bunny. I never looked up to or wanted to be a part of Hollywood. I liked acting. It's one of the things I liked when I was growing up. I loved being a part of the acting team. I loved being a part of the drama team. And then I realized what kind of politics I was getting into when I started looking at it in college. And I said, no, I don't think so. And I went with something else. How are you doing this morning, Tom?
Good morning, Loki. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
I hear you talking a little bit about Pedro Pascal.
Pedo Pascal, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit there. I heard you. And I heard somebody say something about Mark Ruffalo being from Kenosha. I don't think we claim him, just so you know, as a Wisconsinite. But yeah.
And Snowdub, oh, there we go. I had to catch up. Snowdub with the $2 super chat says, "Where's the Ponche Mexican Iron Man? Is he late? He's not here. He's not here this morning.
That Pinche is sleeping in.
Pinche, yeah.
I think if he's coming, he'll be here soon. He just woke up.
I saw the stream yesterday with Machete. That was absolutely awesome stream. Absolutely awesome stream. Him and Robert Meyer Burnett, two one of a kind guys.
Yeah, Paulie's the one who deserves most of the kudos. Like, he's the one who did all the footwork on getting that done. He was persistent with getting him on the schedule because it was just one of those things we were having a hard time getting him to commit to a time between everything going on. And it just so happened that just as he committed to us was when things were starting to open up. So Danny got busy again. And as you know, I mean, Danny's working constantly.
I imagine.
Dude's made 500 movies. I mean, I joked yesterday that he was probably shooting 3 movies while we were shooting the interview with him. So like at the same time, but for real, like, I mean, so like his schedule just got really clustered. So we just happened to find a time in there just to squeeze him in. But hopefully we're going to have him back early next year too. So that sounds like that might be a situation. But yeah, it was a lot of fun and it was a great honor to get to talk to him.
There's a disparity between someone like Danny and someone like Pedro. And I don't know whether it's because Danny's just old school. I don't know. I know that the first time I saw Pedro Pascal in anything was in oh man, what was the drug movie about the
I didn't see it, but was it Cicero?
No, it wasn't Cicero. It was the one with
the other one, yeah.
The South American drug trade, the cocaine, all that. I don't remember.
I know what you're talking about, and I can't think of it. Somebody in the chat will get it.
Yeah. But I that's the first time I ever saw Narcos. Thank you, right as day.
I was thinking that's what it was, but Narcos. I'm like, no, that can't be it. That was something else. But no, that's what I was going to say.
That was the first show I ever saw him. Smart. And I was really excited when he was going to do The Mandalorian. I love The Mandalorians. I love the Star Wars EU. I was like, great, he's going to be The Mandalorian.
He was actually the best part of Wonder Woman 84 too.
Oh God. And that's a horrible movie.
I know, right? Well, Chris Pratt was fine, but Chris Pratt's Chris Pratt. I mean,
yeah.
Or Pine,
what is that? Oh, it's a trash bin.
Pine, Chris Pine. I meant.
Oh man,
it's early. I've been up since 3 o'clock, so excuse me if I get a few things wrong this morning.
Working the midnight oil.
Yeah, we had a video we had to get done, so yeah. So I just finished that up, and I seen you were going live, and I hopped in the chat.
Heck yeah, thank you for hopping on. Like I was saying, I don't know if it's because Danny's old school or Pedro's just wrapped up in. Is someone feeding him this? Is someone telling him you need to be saying this? Is someone controlling is it him? It's all these questions of why talk like this and why act like this. I think
a lot of more of it has to do with Danny is not a part of that main Hollywood.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it, crew or group or clique. I mean, he has had some varied political takes on things, but he does not seem to just follow along with the narrative like a lot of people in Hollywood do. And I wish I could remember the guy's name, but there was a guy who was a journalist that I had talked to on a podcast once, and he was the famous one who had the quote about journalists and their leaning. And I got to talk to him a little bit more in depth about it. And I mean, he got a lot of flack for what he said, but when when I got to discuss it with him, it made more sense and how he brought it up. But like he was basically whistleblowing how the media is like 90% left leaning, and not only that, extremely left leaning, and how they run this narrative and how they will, and we see it in full effect. With you just brought up the Rittenhouse case earlier, like clearly we saw it in full effect with that, right? And and last summer and everything else. So like I don't think Danny's the type of guy, because I don't think it has anything to do with old school or new school. Because look at somebody like John Leguizamo, who is an old school guy, but yet he completely goes with the narrative, right?
Yep.
As opposed to somebody like Danny who doesn't. So I mean, in that sense, I look at it like, if you can kind of just, I think that's the big thing, is that you got to stay out of that bubble.
Yeah. And Danny's big enough to stay out of that bubble and still do whatever he wants to, because he's
too busy to be in it, I think. He does so much besides just movies too. And I think that's what I loved about Robert's intro yesterday morning, because I don't know if he had pre-prepared that or what, but it sounded like he did. It was so perfect. But I mean, he just just basically touch the tip of the iceberg on this type of stuff that Danny does outside of movies. And maybe that's what keeps him, away from a lot of that crap. He actually puts, his efforts to work. He does things in the community that he's from and for other underprivileged kids and things of that sort. So, I mean, he does a lot, as opposed to a lot of these actors and stuff who go out there and say, oh, we got to do this and you do better. It's like, yeah, but what the hell are you doing? Right? You're the one with all the millions of dollars and nothing to do right now. So why don't you do something?
And they don't. And yeah, you're right. They don't. And they seem to want to be able to talk about whatever they want to talk about and spew whatever crap they want to spew. But when it comes to actually doing something,
yeah, like let's see, like a lot of them are getting behind the whole jabby, stabby thing. Like, what if a bunch of them got together and actually pooled a bunch of their money and found a way to cure the shit?
yeah, actually stop it.
Yeah, exactly. No. They're more than willing to take a check from whoever and tote that line. I don't want to get your stuff taken down, so I'm trying to be as cryptic as possible.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. And Adega's got a point. With more and more studios being consolidated into larger and fewer outlets, those in charge feel free to push their agenda and hire like-minded psychos, just like Disney.
Pretty much.
And Disney obviously doesn't give a shit what they say, because they're all for it. They're backing them up behind it anyway. Whether you're looking at Pedro Pascal, whether you're looking at who's that other crazy bastard that writes their books?
Pablo Hidalgo.
Pablo Hidalgo. Thank you. God, too early in the morning. Pablo Hidalgo.
He's a good little tick.
It doesn't matter what they say. I have never experienced this before, where a company will let its employees pretty much do whatever they want to, as long as they're checking the right boxes and just turn a blind eye to it. You would think that a company like Disney would be like, no, don't make us look bad, but they just don't care.
It used to be I mean, even thinking back to like the 70s when like Marlon Brando and some of those guys were one of the first ones to really make like political stands during like the Oscars and stuff. Even then, that was pretty frowned upon. Like, I mean, even though somebody like what's her face, Jane Fonda, was it? Or not Jane Fonda, Jane the one actress who was real like who said a lot of stupid shit during the Vietnam War. I can't remember her name now.
Might have been Fonda.
Was it Jane Fonda?
Yeah,
I think it was. I was like, am I thinking of the wrong person? But no, yeah, it was Jane Fonda. And like, she was another one who like, at the time, I think a lot of people kind of
Jane Seymour.
No, but I don't think that. No. It was Jane Fonda. Pretty sure Jane Fonda. Yeah, Dave Bob said it too. Yeah, like she was one who also was real political at that time too. And you had Rob Reiner and a few others who spoke out, but it was never like this huge thing. Like most people in Hollywood back then, it seemed like just kind of kept their mouth shut and did their job. And I'm not saying that nobody should have an opinion about something, but to me, if you're somebody like an actor or something like that, getting political like that, unless it's getting behind something like, feeding the kids of Africa or a specific, like something you can specifically put your power and your money and all that kind of stuff behind, like a good cause, just kind of generally being political doesn't really help anything. All it does is divide your audience, right? I mean, like Michael J. Fox obviously does like the stuff for the Parkinson's disease, but that's my point, is like he specifically puts all his power and influence behind that, as opposed to going out there and saying, vote for Hillary Clinton and shit like that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. That's not what he's doing. He's behind that. He's doing that. He's focused on that. If you want to be a celebrity and do that, I say more power to you. Find something that you feel you can add to and actually make a difference, as opposed to just going out there and telling everybody to do better when you're in the industry that has had nothing but problems with sexism, racism, classism, all these things for generations. When us on the other side, we're like, we don't have the same problems you guys do in Washington, corporate America, and Hollywood, right? We know we're not supposed to grab our coworker's ass, right? We know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's things that we already know. We've worked with people that are not white. We've had bosses that aren't white or men. Like, that's not the way things work in the normal world. That's just in Washington, corporate American Hollywood, where things are still like that. So they see that and they think that's what the rest of the world is like. So I'm not trying to give them excuses, but I'm just saying I can understand where, from a certain point of view, when you live in a bubble like that, where, especially when all that influence is coming from and all that money's coming from, why they're buying into this bullshit propaganda, right? Like, that's really where I see a lot of it's coming from. And then you have all these influences with money coming in constantly. And that's where the whole idea of, well, how can they keep doing this without making money? Well, there's your answer. But now we are starting to see some of the, especially with Disney and a few other places, where the money people are starting to ask, where is the real money? These movies should be making more money. Why is a Marvel movie not making $1 billion? Why is a Star Wars movie losing money? Those kind of things, right?
Yeah, where are the fans going and why?
Exactly.
Why are they leaving?
Well, and in the last few weeks with the trial was a perfect example. Look how people just completely turned on the media, because they were finally, if they were actually paying attention to the trial, they actually realized, oh shit, we've been lied to this whole time. Right. And that's where I kept saying, sadly, not just that 17-year-old kid was on trial, but last summer was on trial. And that's where all these other people were freaking out on in certain areas, like, because they knew if this kid was found not guilty, then that means they did something wrong.
The other it was a couple weeks ago. I was reading this article about this gentleman works in a newsroom in New York. He's never been out of New York. He's lived his entire life in New York, and he's a black man. And he went to tour the southern states, and him and his wife had talked about being worried. And then they were there. They went to Florida, they went to Louisiana, they went to Texas. And in his story, he writes about the fact that he'd never been treated that normal. He said people didn't care if I was black. I didn't care about the color of my skin. Most of the restaurants we went to, all they cared about was putting food in my stomach. Good food, good Southern food. No one ever was like, but you're a black guy, you this or you that. Whereas at home, he was treated completely differently. It was like they had to treat him special because he was black. And he said he'd never been treated so normal as he was when he was vacationing in southern states. There was no isms at all. There were no Yahtzees. The Klan wasn't patrolling the streets at night looking for him. And of course they're not. Of course they're not. Because that's not what happens. That's not what happens. They pushed a narrative with Rittenhouse. They pushed this narrative like there were these white people marching around the streets in pointed hats with automatic weapons, doing all these horrible things, like it's fucking 1940s Germany. Right. That's not what was happening at all. There were people burning down people's homes, burning down stores. I mean, can you imagine, Tom, if you let's say tomorrow you retired from doing YouTube and you went off and you had a business, whatever it was, or a radio station, something you'd always wanted to do, and someone just came along and burned it the fuck down. Would you not be upset about that? Would you not want to protect your property?
Of course I would. And I mean, again, like that's a totally different question as far as how to handle it, but than what the situation with Rittenhouse, because that's a completely other scenario. Oh, yeah. But like, no, you're 110% right. And it's just the sad fact that, even though this all happened in Wisconsin and not in the South, I've jokingly said, Wisconsin is the South of the North. And I'm not kidding. And I said it before this happened, and I was afraid it was going to happen. I said, if they try pulling that quote unquote, mostly people protesting here, it's not going to fly and somebody is going to get shot. And that's exactly what fucking happened. Now, it could have been a lot worse. I mean, that's the thing. In the end, it's a situation where we're at. Like, I hope that this is gonna detour more things like this, but unfortunately, it sounded like there was some upheaval in some places, but not nearly to the point where it could have been. Like in Wisconsin, we were fine. We had a whole other situation happen this weekend that had nothing to do with that. That I'm sure some people tried to draw some parallels to, but had nothing to do with it. But again, it just goes to show, like, you're right. Like, there's this idea that the South is still like it was in this, even like in the 50s and 60s. It's like, no. Like, even I don't know how old you are, Loki, but I think you're pretty close to me in age. But even when we were growing up, like, it wasn't still like that. Like, there was maybe a few places in the South, maybe, but the chances were pretty slim that you would find any place that was still that segregated anywhere. And where
Every
you would
once in a while, you heard
very
something,
rarely,
and you were
yeah.
like, "What in the hell? Like, really?"
Exactly, right? Like, it was never anything anybody put up with.
No, no, and to have
Yeah.
a finger pointed at you, and see that's the to me that's the hardest thing to deal with, is for someone that grew up occasionally hearing something like that and being like, "What the hell? What the hell's wrong with you?" And then getting a finger pointed at you because you don't like something. You don't like the new Star Wars, you don't like the new Star Trek, you don't like the new Doctor Who. You don't, just because you don't like something, you are immediately, you must be a part of this fringe element.
Right.
That's crazy.
Well, and the media feeds it all. Like we were just saying, like, again, to go back to your point, like, I was talking to a gentleman who happened to be black, but he's older, right? Like, he was in his, I think he's in his 50s, maybe somewhere in there, maybe early 50s. But like, he was talking about how he feels like between the media and this whole idea that's been fed into to people now is that, you know, most of these kids, he said, and I'm trying to paraphrase as best I can without going without the boundaries, but he said, like, most of these kids don't know what real racism is nowadays. He goes, they have never walked down the street and heard somebody yell at them, "Hey, you boy," or "Hey, you N-word," or whatever, because it's just not something that you would hear nowadays. Because believe you me, they know damn well that if some white kid or white boy said that to them, they turn around and get his ass kicked, right? Like, that was what it was like for years and years and years growing up. That was not something you would do. And if that was to happen, then you get your ass kicked. It was expected, right?
Right.
Like, exactly. And he said, that's the thing, is none of these kids nowadays have actually faced true racism. He's like, when I was a kid, it was nothing for me to go and run around when I was 5 or 6 years old and hear, little N boy, come here. And it wasn't even like it was anything, right? Like, he's like, that was just typical at that time. But he goes, as I got older, that shit changed. And he goes, now we're getting to the point where people are trying to pretend it's like it was back in the 50s and 60s again, and it ain't. He's like, he goes, it's even now it's even gotten worse to where we're like you just said before, back to the 30s and 40s where it was even worse, and he's like, these kids just have never really faced what true racism really is. And he goes, I don't think any of them really would know what to do if they actually did face it. Right. Like, he goes, my generation and the generations before really did face racism, but we fought so these kids didn't have to. And now they're acting like a bunch of fucking victims when we've actually busted our ass to get to this point, kind of thing. And it's kind of the same thing with the LGBTQ community too. Same kind of stuff I hear, right? It's the media feeding the minds of these young kids and these young activists, and they think they're, as important as the hippies were in the 60s and the feminists were in the 60s and the civil rights movement was in the 60s, when they're not, and they don't have the same shit to fight for, right? They want to have a cause to fight for, but really they're fighting the wrong cause. And I've said this before. I said a lot of this changed when Washington and politics and corporate America, and even Hollywood included, figured out that we can change a lot of shit by, instead of, everybody going after the man, because the man is usually somebody with money. It was always a class thing before, when racism started becoming less of a problem and sexism started becoming less of a problem. It became more about class then, but then they realized, okay, that's a problem because, the rich are eventually going to get ate by the poor. And as we saw this continuingly larger growing, bridge between the rich and the poor, and there was no middle class anymore, those elite people had to find a way to save their ass. So instead of just everybody going after the man, they put white in front of it. Now, how easy was that to take all the pressure off of those people and just put it on a complete group of people? And as long as you're a white man who kisses everybody's ass and does exactly what the narrative says you're supposed to do, you're safe. But if you're not, then you're in trouble. And then it extended beyond white men, because then we got like Dave Chappelle and other people who are in on this shit. And I've even had people in our sphere talk to me about this, how they've noticed they've been treated differently in the last few years, that no matter what race they are, and they're a guy, right? Like, so this is something that's a continued like process, and it's just going to continually break us down and break us down. And the more they take away our freedoms, the less we know, when we're just happy with what little stupid scraps of shit we get, because we're not paying attention while they're doing the rest.
And you mentioned Hollywood, and doing what Hollywood has been doing. One thing I have noticed is that ever since the Me Too, all the Me Too shenanigans, the women don't want equality. The women involved in this don't want equality. They want the upper hand. They want to be in the position Weinstein was in when he was still running things. That's the position they want to be in. They want to be in that position of power. That's not what we've heard all this time. That's not what we've been told. That's not, oh, well, things need to be equitable. That's not what people want. Things don't want to be equitable. They want to be in the position that people were in when they abused the system, and they use the system to their advantage.
You're right. Yeah, exactly. They want that power. And that's not about equality. That's about revenge. And it's not all women, and it's not all minorities, and it's not all this stuff, but it's especially when it comes to women that you're talking about. Like, there's quite a few women, and I'm sure there's even women who agree with this. Women are vindictive as fuck, and they want revenge when they get spurned or they feel like they've been wronged in some way, whether or not they even have anybody to blame. So they will act out. And again, it's not just women, it's other people too. Like, there are people with this, but especially women, when they get wronged in some way or they feel like they have been. And you're right. Like, if they feel like they've been in this place of submission for all this time, and now they get this taste of power, they're not going to want equality. Are you crazy? Like, they're going to want to swing that with an iron fist. And women like KK, exactly, brightest day. Exactly. And again, I don't want to like generalize women. This is not all women in general. It's just, yes, it's just a select few that are definitely running a lot of this shit.
And B Geek, let's talk with $5 super chat, says, damn you, Cowboy Bebop. I did the shower bath shower. It was amazing. I'm now ruined for life. Are you talking about the new series, the new live action series, MB Geek? I have not seen it. I haven't even seen the anime Cowboy Bebop.
I've heard a lot of bad things about it, but there's a few people who are okay with it. I don't know.
Hell has no fury like a woman scorned.
Exactly.
Soul assassin. There's a big difference between the equality we were moving towards and the equity that they're now demanding. It's true.
Yeah.
Okay, so I saw this, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this burnt taco thing today. Burnt tacos in Hollywood. God, now I can't remember the guy's name. The guy that was accused of groping all the guys, basically. Kevin Spacey. Okay, I hope I just escaped from Kevin Spacey's basement. Okay, so he's going to have to pay Netflix, a subsidiary of Netflix, $30 million because of accusations. $30 million, yes. Kevin Spacey has been ordered by a judge, and he appealed it and lost that appeal last week, I think. $30 million to one of Netflix's management divisions for House of Cards. Now, the reason why he is going to have to pay $30 million is he was removed from his contract by them. He got fired by Netflix for violating his contract because of human decency, yada, 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 whatever. Basically, he got accused of all the shit he did. Now, they fired him, and they're now claiming he ruined the last season of House of Cards, that he tanked the last season of House of Cards, and that he owes them $30 million because the last season of House of Cards tanked because he wasn't a part of it, even though they fired him over accusations. Kevin Spacey has never been convicted of any of this stuff. He's not facing time for anything. He has been taken to court for civil suits. He got out of one because the prosecution refused to provide evidence. That there's been all kinds of stuff about this, but now he has lost an appeal and is going to have to pay this subsidiary of Netflix $30 million because they fired him over accusations.
Wow, this is kind of deep in a way.
I've never heard of anything like this.
Look, shit. Maybe that judge was just a fan of House of Cards. I mean, I don't. I'm really trying. I mean, to a point, I can kind of see like whether or not he did get in any like legal issues, like specifically. I can see his conduct led to this possibly, but again, you're in this gray area of, he said shit, right? So,
And it's an accusation. Now I understand what Kevin Spacey has done over the last however many years.
Right. I'm not like trying to stick up for him in any way or saying he's innocent, but you're right. Like he's never actually been convicted in a court of law.
Yes.
It is what I said, a lot of he said stuff at this point. There has really been no real evidence given. I think the most we've got is like, I think Kevin did admit to meeting, I think Anthony, what's his face? The one from Star Trek, like when he was
Anthony
younger,
Rapp. Yep.
But like he still claims that nothing ever happened or whatever it was. So like, again, that's like the closest we've got to anything that I know of as far. And so that's a tough one. I mean, we had similar situation with Bryan Singer here too, with the whole Bohemian Rhapsody thing too. I mean, there's a lot of kind of, even though he's been accused of a lot of shit, he's never actually had his day in court. Nobody's ever actually filed any, criminal complaints. It's a really tough one to really kind of, I really have a hard time seeing how the court can find him at fault in this unless he's been convicted. I get where you're coming from, Loki. Like I'm not condoning this, like the whole situation at all. It's a whole fucking messy kind of thing because we don't know the facts. So it's kind of a tough one. I really get what you're saying here. It's, I hate to side with Spacey on this one, but I think you're right.
And how is that a sign of things to come? Is it?
I hope not.
You have to accusation. I mean, if someone accused you of something and you didn't do it, and you end up paying for it anyway, that's what I'm looking at here, and just shaking my head and going, that's not the way this works. But apparently, that's the way it's working. If you're ordered to pay $30 million in a court of law because you were accused of something,
right?
That's, to me, that's completely out there.
I mean, I'm trying to think of a scenario where that could even be plausible, but I'm stretching. Because like, even if you're like, and this is just like completely hypothetical, let's say you start a business, right? And somebody accuses you of something, and throughout that accusation, and you're going to court and doing whatever you're doing, your business fails and falters, but then in the end, you're found innocent, right? Even in that sense, you probably have some legal ground to go after the person who accused you of those things because you can prove that their accusations brought down your business.
Yes.
So I guess in this case, and again, I mean, and I am no lawyer, I have no law degrees of any fucking kind, so let me say that up front. Just looking at it from what I know of the law, I mean, I guess this is kind of a civil thing to where Spacey's kind of shit out of luck. And he's got to just basically get sued, and then he's got to sue the individuals who fucking accused him of shit while he was on the show. Like, it's kind of get messy if that's the case. Otherwise, he's just gonna have to take it and deal with it, right? Like, I mean, that's kind of where it looks like for me. I mean, I guess because I mean, I've seen enough court shows and stuff like that where when somebody costs somebody money over some stupid shit, that's usually the case. Is like they'll say like, "Yeah, you're getting sued now and you're liable for this side of it, but I'm leaving the case open with prejudice or whatever, so then you can sue this individual to make yourself whole because on your end of things they made you liable." And like, yeah, again, like it's a whole kind of convoluted thing that I understand, but that's my cursory understanding of the law.
Yeah, and it's just amazing that, like Mark said earlier, public opinion is now judge, jury, and executioner.
See,
You can
that's what
lose
I'm
your
yeah.
livelihood. You can lose everything now, just in the face of public opinion.
Well, I want to
If a
believe that the
company,
courts are still the courts, right?
that's true. That I want to believe that as well. But if a company looks at it and goes, "Wow, you've been accused of this, 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 you're fired," just off of that, it doesn't take facts anymore to ruin someone's life. If you're working for a company, say you're working for Halliburton, and someone comes along and says, "Well, this he touched me," and you've got cameras all throughout the facility that show you never touched this person, but then you get fired anyway, just over the accusation. That's all it takes anymore is an accusation. Well, we don't want to look like this. We don't want to look like we're defending this kind of activity. So I'm sorry, you're fired. And it's done.
Well,
And that's Netflix is basically used. Well, we had it in our contract with you that you can't get up to any hanky shit. And some of these accusations are coming from internally in House of Cards. You're gone. Now, did Spacey do that? I'm pretty sure he probably did some hanky shit while he was working for them, but I don't know for sure. And only he does.
well, and that's what I'm saying. Like, let's say for the sake of argument, like I said, theoretically, let's say he is innocent. And this may, and this is where I'm kind of trying to wrap my head around how this could actually be a situation where, even without the type of world we live in right now, where this has nothing to do with this and that, and it has everything to do with the law, where it's like, yeah, I mean, since these accusations are stemmed at him and they publicly became this problem, and that's why he was let go, this subsidiary company or whatever it is could legally have grounds to go after him, and they won, which they obviously did. But then again, that's where I say, like, well, then it's upon him now to have to go after the people who made the accusations, and that's where the law is on his side then in that sense. And basically it just kind of revolves around the fact, well, you made these accusations but you never did, you know, take it to court or file any criminal complaints, kind of thing. And again, but that's where that's up to Spacey and whether or not he actually is guilty of all this shit, right? Like, because that's kind of where
Right.
he's at. I think he'd almost have to like do something like that to prove his innocence, to be made whole by the other parties involved. And again, this is just my cursory knowledge of the law and how these kind of things usually work, but because contracts make things very complicated, and that's the thing is where I, it all kind of boils back down to did Netflix actually have grounds to fire him on? And since those things are so ambiguous, they probably did, right? Like
Oh yeah.
that's the problem here. And so like then the burden is on Spacey to probably go after those who accused him to be made whole because of this whole situation. Then at least that's my understanding without repeating it again.
Yeah. He's gotta go after the people that actually accused him and prove that, hey, I never did this, and sue them. Turn around and sue
Yeah.
them for yeah, that they're liable or that they committed slander or however he wants to, in print it's liable. So I know that because J. Jonah Jameson told
Yeah.
me. In print
I
it's
love that
liable.
line. I resent that. In print, it's liable.
But it's the mentality of Hollywood, and it's how Hollywood has acted and what they have done. Defamation doesn't matter anymore. It definitely doesn't. It just doesn't. And there's so many accusations, so much finger pointing that anybody can do it, and it doesn't matter. Thank you, Tom, for being on here.
No.
Thank you for hopping
But no,
on.
I just want to say, like, to your original point, I do think you're right that even though there is all that other stuff involved, we do have this problem where there is a lot of political influence. And courts have always been politically influenced, right?
Right.
Like you always want to get a certain judge, you always want to get a certain jury, you always want to get a certain prosecutor. You know, those kind of things already come into play prior to the political world we lived in. And now the political world we live in has made that even more complicated. So yeah, you're not wrong in your original assumption either. So yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out too.
Thank you. And I think that they've got to get their shit together. And Hollywood doesn't care. I really don't think Hollywood cares. I don't think that at the end of the day they care what they say. They care what they do. They think they're Teflon. They're the Teflon tailback. Nothing's gonna stop them
Too
from
big
doing
to
what they
fail.
do. Too big to fail. And I can't wait to see it if they do. I can't. I want to be here if they do. If Disney goes down, I want to be there to say, well, you know, there are reasons. This shouldn't shock anybody. This should not be a surprise. It should be a shock, even though Mexican Iron Man tells me constantly it's never going to happen, Loki. That company's never going anywhere. I'm like, well, I'm waiting. I want to see it one day. Maybe I'll get lucky.
Well, the thing about Hollywood, as we've learned, is that even though the people who are in charge may change, the studios never really go anywhere. It's kind of like any other brand, right?
Right.
McDonald's is never going to go anywhere. Coke's never going to go anywhere. I mean, different people may run it and own it, and it may be under different subsidiaries of this or that or the other, but it's still always going to be. Look at how many times Warner Brothers has changed hands in the last 20 years.
Yes. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And they're still kind of out there and lost. But thank you, Tom.
Yeah,
for
man,
being
no
on
problem. I
this morning.
love hanging out and talking with you, even when Mikey's not about. I miss Mikey, but you know,
Mikey's
he needed
busting
some
his
rest.
ass.
He needed
He
some
does.
rest. So
Absolutely, he does. Absolutely does. Thank you, everyone, for being here this morning. Thank you guys for hanging out and listening. I know this was a weird Taco Tuesday, but having Tom on was an absolute pleasure. And guys, take care. Do you have anything you got coming up that you want to share with us before we get out of here?
coming up, we have we always have just typical videos. We have our morning shows. We have Midnight's Edge After Dark in the evenings on After Dark, which is another channel. We have Midnight's Edge Espanol, which of course you can find Paulie and those guys hanging out on Tuesdays live, and they have various videos dropping throughout the week. So yeah, just the typical stuff. You never know what we're gonna do. We're always working on something. So
working their butts off, guys. Working their butts off over at Midnight's Edge. Everybody take care. Have a great one. Be excellent to each other and always speak friend to enter. Have a good one, guys.
These videos are tremendous. Like, comment, and subscribe, and hammer that notification bell.